from Cayman Islands.
Welcome to, in fact, the rainy day. Very rainy.
Okay, a rainy day in Cayman Islands, sunny day in Kent. So Marco is a technologist, and he worked in the industry for many years. And currently he is running a software development company. And he's also an advisor on many blockchain initiatives. We've been talking about blockchain for a while. So I'll just ask Marco, you've been doing other stuff, obviously. Blockchain is a kind of a new thing. Why did you decide to look into that?
I've spent most of my life, in terms of the work I do, working with fairly leading edge technologies. So I started out in the internet in the 80s. This was back when there were no such things as ISPs, and I was actually helping ISPs set themselves up. I started web development probably 3 to 5 weeks after they actually set out the specification for the first version of the web, and started doing websites for businesses. And generally, my career path has kind of followed boredom. The minute everybody else is doing it, I want to find what's next. So I was involved in desktop publishing, and then everybody was into that, so I just moved on. And of course the internet, and then application service providers, if you remember those, which basically are the same thing as a SaaS product today. And I've just been moving around. And in fact,
what SaaS product is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Software as a service. You use it probably every day and don't even know it.
No, exactly.
Most of your apps are.
Yeah, I hear many times that maybe blockchain will be like that. We'll use it, we will not even know it.
We'll get there. I won't say very soon, but you're right. For mass adoption, you cannot have people actually picking the thing. I mean, people don't realize that when they're using Facebook, they're actually using servers that are scattered around the planet in the quote-unquote cloud. But that's exactly what's going on, and that is software as a service. So I've been working in that space. I got into the concept of decentralization in the early 2000s, because I was trying to solve a problem that didn't really have a centralized solution. And of course, at the time, decentralization was rather difficult to do. Everything was centralized. And then, of course, along comes Bitcoin. And I looked at it and I thought, okay, that's fascinating. At the same time, I was also looking at BitTorrent, which is a different type of decentralization. And in fact, Bitcoin has quite a bit of BitTorrent tech built into it. It is one of the parts of the decentralization layer. Not BitTorrent itself, but the code that is used to build BitTorrent. And for those of you who are not familiar with BitTorrent, that's the downloading mechanism of choice for all pirates. But it is an extremely effective way to put a file out on the internet and make sure that there's always a copy available to download from someone. Which is one of the key points of the blockchain. There always has to be a copy available somewhere that you can check or talk to. And that's the concept of decentralization. If you've got copies scattered everywhere, then there's always one, at least, you can get access to. And so along comes the Ethereum world, which was 2014-15. That's when it really got interesting for me. Because there was actually something you could do with it other than cryptocurrency. And that's when I started to get deeply involved in it and started working on Ethereum, and then I got into other platforms that were launching. I did a stint with IOHK, which is the development group behind Cardano. And I'm now working across multiple projects, multiple different platforms, as well as helping to build new platforms. Platform being things like Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you mention names that I have heard of, like Ethereum, like Cortana, but a lot of people haven't. Now, Ethereum, I have a personal connection to because the founder of Ethereum comes from a small town near Moscow, Kolomna, and he's also a Canadian. So I'm, so Ethereum indeed opened the gates to create blockchain for enterprise. And you said that this is what triggered really your interest. What do you think? Where are we with blockchain for enterprise? Are we, are we just in the beginning of a very big journey, or what do you think?
The thing that's tricky about blockchain in general that people are still, generally trying to wrap their heads around is that part of its requirement that makes it so secure and so powerful as a tool is its decentralization. But decentralization implies that you have as many parties as possible from all different perspectives within the marketplace, use that platform, able to see the entire database all the time. And because that makes cheating very difficult. You can tweak your copy, but everybody else will notice that it doesn't match anymore, right? And then they'll say, you're a bad actor, I don't want to do business with you anymore. And that's an extremely powerful thing. When you look at things like Bitcoin, you cannot hack Bitcoin. Everyone's heard all about these hacks of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was never hacked. Bitcoin had never been hacked. It is the people who build centralized systems that connect to Bitcoin who've been hacked.
Mm-hmm.
The chain does exactly what the chain is supposed to do. It's just that the people who connect their software to it or connect their infrastructure to it, there are weaknesses in their infrastructure that cause their piece of the ecosystem to fail or to be compromised. But the core chain is untouched. It doesn't care whether the transaction you put on the chain is fair or not. Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, you said that the chain is untouched. By that you mean, I assume, one of the big public blockchains. Well, the big public blockchain.
Well, any public.
Okay.
Yeah, any public blockchain. So that could be the Ethereum is a big public blockchain. Cardano, Corda. Well, not less so Corda. Ripple, less so. But chains where you can actually go as anybody who wants to read a manual and learn a little bit of software coding can actually go and look, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop you from looking.
Can you comment here, just out of curiosity, of Polkadot?
Polkadot is literally a new platform.
Okay.
Right. It's a new platform that is the same deal. It's public. So if you have the requisite software on your machine, you can go look at the chain and you can read the entire chain. Sure, it's not exactly English, but you can read it. And if you know what's going on inside the chain which is, by the way, published, everything that goes on inside the chain is published. So you can read the manual, go to the chain and start reading what's going on in the chain, and nobody can stop you from doing that.
Okay.
Right? Other than yourself not having the motivation to do so. What you get with enterprise is what they call, another name for enterprise blockchain is permissioned blockchain.
Yes.
Now, this is a blockchain where everybody can't go look, even if they publish a manual, because you have to be granted access to look. And the security risk you run there now is that because only people with passwords, if you will, can get in to see and or interact with that blockchain, you've now centralized something.
Yeah.
There's someone who controls the access, and that person literally controls the entire infrastructure.
So in your experience, this person, is that a person outside of the companies that are actually involved, or is it
rarely?
The company? No. Okay.
Yeah, it's always somebody. It's either somebody or some committee formed by the enterprises participating. So it becomes what you might consider a, how do you put it, almost like a legal contract between the parties who participate, that they all agree that they will collectively act in the best interests of the ecosystem, and they all agree that they're going to record their actions on this blockchain, which they all collectively control. Each of them has a separate, what's the word? A separate node, if you will, which is the machine that runs the software of the blockchain. They all have one or more nodes on this network, and they all watch each other's nodes using software to make sure that nobody's cheating.
Yeah. One of the questions I had, I gave a webinar in Russia, well, without leaving the UK. And the question was, what happens when there is a transition, a person leaves or the company dissipates? You know, what happens in this situation?
Well, and again, we're talking about enterprises here. I'm assuming that we're going to have, for example, in the mining space, you're going to have 5 or 7 different companies that are extractors. And then you're going to have 4 to 5 companies that are processors. And they're all going to decide to participate collectively in a single blockchain infrastructure that tracks extraction to production, or to processing rather.
Yes.
So if you're going down that road, and then say one extractor goes out of business, right? The mine dries up and they haven't got any money, so they go out of business. They're gone from the network, but the network's still there because you still have the other 4 extractors, and the 5 processors are still cranking along. And of course, there'll be new companies that will come in and say, oh, yeah, we're extracting over here. We've got a mine that's going to go for the next 50 years. You know, let us join your thing because we like what's happening here. We like the fact that the processors aren't in charge anymore. It's a collective operation.
Yeah.
So
right. The information access will not be lost?
The access would be lost because if the company fails, for example, so they're no longer contributing, they're no longer running their own node, the rest of the group would simply say, well, okay, well, we're going to revoke their permission.
Okay.
They can't come in and act anymore because they have no basis for having an act, right? They're not extracting.
Okay.
Right.
So the information is stored by this company, or is it stored on blockchain? Oh,
well, and this is, so again, this is a design thing, right? You have to decide, you know, how much information are you going to store collectively versus how much you're going to store individually. In the case of mining, my suspicion would be that you would probably have a rolling database of, you'd have a blockchain tracking all the transactions, right? Events that happen, but you'd have an off-chain store that is shared by all the parties where it's encrypted using the blockchain's encryption tools, but it's off-chain, so it's not bloating out your blockchain. And but it would be owned collectively, so that all members could see the, you know, the filings, the reports that come out, the geology reports, what's the word, geographic assays, all that kind of stuff would all be available to the group. So when that one company vanishes, sure, you're going to lose their accounting information, you're going to lose their internal files that they kept, but all the stuff they contributed to the collective pool of information would still be there and still be accessible by anyone who's a member, including new members who come on.
Yeah, okay.
Unless, of course, you don't want those new members to come on.
Well, one of the problems in mineral exploration and subsequently mining is the loss of not just the data, but the origins of data. You know, like we have an assay in the report, but where did it come from? Can we trust this number? Or somebody publishes the value of, you know, we have so many tons at this grade, and it's just a text in the report and you don't know where it's coming from. So it comes to tracking really the documents, but like you said, yeah, we can't just put everything on blockchain. It really doesn't make sense. But to just track the origins to kind of organize your data. Do you think a blockchain is a solution for that?
Definitely.
Okay.
If you decide that you want to have traceability of all data inbound into your collective ecosystem, which will be run by a blockchain, you simply require that certain credentials will always be presented in order to add documents to the library. And those credentials are who wrote it, who signed off on the report, did anyone verify the report, and if so, who? And that information gets put on chain along with a fingerprint, we call a fingerprint, of the actual document, which is then stored off chain. So no one can tamper with the off chain document because you have a fingerprint of it on chain. And if the fingerprints match, you know someone's tampered with it. Meanwhile, you have the actual provenance of the document and validity of the document also stored on chain.
Excellent. Okay, so we talked a little bit about mining world. What do you think, like in your kind of idea about it, what would a mining company need now to start benefiting from the blockchain technology?
That's the hardest part of bringing, okay, so in an enterprise scenario, it's about creating an ecosystem, a community, right? You don't have a community, there's no point in doing a blockchain, right? If everybody who's using the blockchain is from the same, interested party community. For example, you have a blockchain that is run by extractors only, right? There's no motivation for the extractors to be honest, because nobody they care about is looking, right? No one from the outside is looking. When you get into a scenario where you want blockchain to be effective, you have to have competing perspectives watching. And so you can't just have extractors or just processors. You have to have both at a minimum involved in the ecosystem so that their checks and balances are happening just by human nature. They're happening.
Yeah. No, I
Right?
see that ecosystem. For example, a gold processing plant, the one that processes the gold ore, and it has ore arriving from various mines, from various companies, right? And very often situation is that the company sent, 20 tons of ore. They expect, so much gold out of it. The processing plant said, we processed your 20 tons of ore and we extract X grams. And the company said, no, my average grade in that batch was that. And the processing plant said, sorry, we didn't get any more. That's it,
Right.
And so either processing plant is keeping some, or they mixed up the ore, there is no tracking. So this problem cannot only be solved with blockchain. It has to go together with Internet of Things, where they will be actually tracking that it is exactly that batch of ore that goes at that moment into processing, comes out at that moment, and it's like literally everything with the cameras, how much did they actually melt, how big is the gold, bar in the end of it.
Right.
So it can be done. And definitely in mining,
Sure.
there are this conflict.
You're getting very granular. You're getting very granular there, though. I mean, you're talking about having little cameras that are autonomous cameras, or that are reporting to a blockchain that are watching every machine inside a processor. One could argue that to get started, because that's a big expense to implement that. To get started, you could simply have an auditing function that goes in and says, amount of ore and claimed grade going in, right? And your grade can be verified prior to arriving at the processor by third parties if you want to get that involved. And then how much gold comes out of the processor? Because you could now, because you're doing it this way, you're tracking all the inbound ore and all the inbound putative grades, and you just say simply, I want to track all the gold that's leaving this factory.
Yeah.
Well, right? And if the numbers don't add up.
Yeah. We will not find the solution now. We will not find the solution now, but I think it is important to just highlight that we need to have in the system the parties that are transacting something and do not trust each other. But there is plenty of that in mining. That's not a problem. There is
there's plenty of that everywhere.
Yeah, there is a mining contractor who does something and the mining company does not trust them. There's tons. I'm afraid we're running out of time. Right. But thank you very much, and we'll speak soon.